From Team, I'm Madison McGregor, and this is Mind Time with Madison. Today, we're talking about how to bring mental health into your life. Being a mental health professional, what are some of the main things that are discouraging people from getting the help they need?
This is a great interview. David Letterman interviewed Kanye West, I think recently on his Netflix show. And Kanye talked about, I love the way he put it, but he talked about it's like having a sprain, like your brain is sprained. And when you have a sprained body part, we put it in a cast, we immobilize it, and we allow the person to heal. But when we perceive that a person has a mental illness or a sprain in their brain, so to speak, a sprain in their emotions, we run from it like the plague. And this science that I share with people from some of the research that we did, there was a mom, and she was multiracial. She identified as black. And so we were talking about, what are some of these issues of stigma and how does it look in communities of color? And what she said was, I'm already black, I'm already a woman, I don't also need to be crazy. And that has always stuck with me, right? And so there's this idea that if I self-identify in this way, people are going to judge me even more and even worse than I feel judged right now. So let me just not identify it at all. There's also the issue, I think, about college students. And for a lot of young people in college, what they encounter is they're in a crisis in the moment, but they can't get an appointment for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. It takes that long to get an appointment. At some point, it's sort of like, well, and there's this great comedian, I don't remember his name, but I saw it on YouTube, and he said, I can't afford to be sick. I can't afford to have a mental illness because, therapy costs about $150 an hour, and, I'm looking at my pockets, I don't have $150, right? It's science that I've done over the years. If we had universal health care, I still think people would not go to care, because what people will argue is that it's money. When people don't have money, even when people have money, there's this issue of stigma and these worries and these fears about how they're going to be perceived that I really feel like are the primary drivers of what keeps people out of mental health care.
What can we do to change that? Is there a way to change it? Is there a solution?
What we're doing today, that's a huge way to change it, right? That's tremendous. We have a wonderful opportunity by young people just like you saying, we're going to talk about these issues. We're going to highlight these issues. The work that you're doing with your organization is a huge step. So there are lots of organizations led by millennials, by Generation Z young people, even people of my generation, Gen X, who are really trying to get the word out. But what I would say is that it's the millennials and Gen Z young people who are really putting it out in the forefront, who are making it okay to say everybody struggles with mental health issues. When I do public speaking, I always tell people there's a continuum. Right? And I know when we say the spectrum, people think of autism spectrum, but I try to get people to also think of mental illness and mental health. It's also on this spectrum, right? And so everybody fits somewhere on that line. None of us is immune. And I think the more we can help people understand, even for me, right? I've struggled with depression in my past. I am very open about the fact that I'm an anxious person. I do have anxiety. And it runs in my family. And so the more people like me and other people out there in the public eye, I think like people like Kanye or Kid Cudi or even Jada Pinkett Smith, when they come out and say these are things that I have dealt with, or even the founder of your organization, when they come out and say it may not have been me, but it was this family member that I loved, and it was a really terrible and difficult thing to watch my family member go through that, it makes people feel less alone. So the more we can help people feel like they are not alone in the struggle, and the more we can represent this beautiful rainbow of people, right? All races, all ethnicities, all sexual identity statuses, queer young people, anybody that fits under that umbrella of LGBTQ, no matter where you come from in the world, the more we can get that rainbow in front of people, the easier I think it is for a young person to look and say, okay, that person doesn't look like me, but that person looks just like me. And if they're dealing with it, then I can work on my stuff too. So I really think that's the key, is being open and honest and just talking about what are the issues and then where do you go to get help.
Being a mental health professional and working with young people, what are some of those barriers to opening up and being honest? Is it really just simply being the fear of being judged? Is there more to it? Is it Is there something universal that affects everyone, or is it very specific to each person?
We look at the data. What the data tells us is that nationally, right? I know U.S. data, so I'm sorry I don't know international data, but from a U.S. perspective, for young people in particular, this is pretty much ages between 12 and 18, depression and anxiety are not different to the extent that they show up in different racial ethnic groups, right? So about 8% of young people between the ages of 12 and 18 nationally are impacted or meet criteria for a depressive illness. About a quarter, a lot, 25% meet criteria for an anxiety disorder. So when you think about it in that context, that's a lot of young people who are walking around who meet those criteria. I think for a lot of our young people, there's too much coming at young people too early, right? And because you're so bombarded with so much information, particularly through social media, and so often, you know, I think for any of us, but for young people in particular, you don't have people to help you filter that stuff, that it gets overwhelming, right? And it's that the overwhelmingness of it all that I think drives the sadness, anxiety, and depression in a lot of our young people. For older generations, it's the news, sitting there watching the 6 o'clock news. And now we have 24-hour news channels. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm saying that anytime you're constantly bombarded with something like that, 24/7, it's going to weigh on you, right? There's always some bad stuff happening in the world. What we want is for you to accept that those flaws make you who you are. They make you unique. And so, yes, there's pressure on our young people to be perfect and to have the best grades and to get into the best school. My philosophy is the best school is whatever school works for you. It's not for everybody, right? So different schools are going to meet. Everybody's not meant to go to Ivy League or to go to, you know, the big public institutions or McGill, fancy McGill University, right? That's not for everybody. So whatever is best for you, what I try to tell young people is that's what you need to strive for. But you can only get to that place of striving if you have people in your corner who are telling you that doing your best, the best for you, is what matters the most. And we unfortunately have so many young people where that's not the message they receive. The message they receive is there's an expectation. I'm not going to name a school, but you're going to go to school X because that's where I went, or because that's where, 75% of all U.S. presidents came from. So that's the expectation, and you're going to have a certain major. I say this as a parent. And so if you're hearing that constantly, where's the room for you to make mistakes? It's pressure, right? What it's doing is it's putting so much pressure on you that it's hard for the young people to sort of figure out, well, what do I want? And how can I function? And they're always in a state of feeling like they're disappointing someone. And those are the kinds of stressors that I think weigh on young people and can absolutely contribute to the spike we've seen, anxiety and depression, not to mention fear of missing out because you're on social media looking at what your friends are doing all the time.
If it's coming from school and everywhere they're surrounded with, how do they face that mountain of pressure?
We have to acknowledge that the pressure exists. We cannot fix a problem until we face the problem, right? We got to face the problem. And so facing the problem means that we have to be still sometimes, right? And in order to be still, we have to stop doing stuff, right? I hate to make it sound so simplistic, but those are things that we have to do. So I'm a big believer and a big proponent of mindfulness. That's not for everybody, right? Mindfulness and meditation. I do it every day. I've been doing it for about 12 years, 3 years straight. I'm almost at 3 years straight every single day. But that's important to me, and that helps me because I have anxiety. So I will tell young people that's one tool. Another tool that young people groan when I say it, but I feel like it's super important, is you gotta take breaks from social media. You cannot be on social media 24/7 looking at what your friends are doing, because the inevitability is that you're going to start comparing yourself, right? It's like, think about summer. We're on summer break. Everybody's vacationing. And you're looking at the pictures they're posting. You're thinking that your family vacation to Virginia Beach is just, right? It's nothing. And those are the kinds of things that I think can weigh. And so we have to take what I call them social media diets. You just slow down a little bit. Maybe don't be on quite as long every day. So that's one thing. The meditation is another. Exercise, getting good sleep. I know I sound like a parent, I'm sorry. Eating right, and finding people who make you feel good about yourself, right? You have got to have people in your circle. You can't have a huge circle. My mom told me when I was a little kid, and I've never forgotten it. Baby, everybody is not your friend. Right? I said, oh, my friend this, oh, my friend. She said, no, baby, everybody's not your friend. If they don't consistently make you feel good about you, if they don't consistently encourage and support you, then maybe that's not your friend. Maybe that's an acquaintance. And so that's what I tell young people too. Be careful who you associate yourself with, because the energy that they bring to you is the energy that you're going to carry with you. Right? So I tell my kids, no one is allowed to be in your space who does not have positive, good energy for you and for everyone they encounter. If they can't do that consistently, then maybe that's an acquaintance, maybe that's not a friend. So those are some of the things that I encourage young people to do and to think about when they're choosing, how to take care of their mental health. And the final thing I have to say is, taking care of our mental health is an active process. It's not passive. You have to do something. You have to do something. You have to be engaged in order to take care of your mental health.
I know for me, and I think a lot of young people feel this way, like, I've got school, I've got a social life, I've got all these pressures. My mental health, I can't take care of it. I gotta just leave it up to someone else.
And what I tell all my young people is, all those things you want to do with your life, you can't do those things if you are not okay yourself as a starting point. So mental health is not the thing that you tack on at the end to take care of. Mental health is where it starts, right? You have to be healthy. If you're an athlete and you have a broken limb, God forbid, well, you have to wait until that limb has been in a cast and has healed before you can get back to that sport. Then you got to do rehab. So it's a stepwise process, but the core of it is you have to take care of yourself. Your body has to be healthy. It's the same thing with your mental health. If you are not emotionally and mentally healthy, it makes it that much harder to do all these other things. And I think what young people perceive often, and what they tell me, is that it feels like it's a lot of work. I don't have time to sit and meditate for 45 minutes a day. As you were saying, I don't have time to go on a bike ride because that's my favorite thing to do and it clears my head. I only have time for that on the weekends. Okay, maybe you don't have 45 minutes to sit and meditate, but you got 45 seconds. Maybe 45 seconds is where you have to start. Maybe you can't do an hour-long bike ride every day, but maybe you can get up an extra 30 minutes early before you go to school and find some safe place to ride a stationary bike in the house, right? Your mom's stationary bike that she never uses, or, right, you can get on a bike and go outside, or maybe you can ride your bike to school because that will help you clear your head. So we can all figure out ways to make these things work for us, but we've got to put a little bit of effort into it.
Dr. Alfie, can you tell us about yourself in your own words and kind of describe your journey into the world of mental health for our audience?
Really, for me, the journey began when I was a kid. I'm from an area in Virginia called Virginia Beach, it's southeastern Virginia. And I grew up in an area where not a whole lot of people looked like me. And so where I grew up, the area it had three racial ethnic groups. There were white folks, black folks, and Filipinos. Not even just Asians in general. We had a large Filipino American population. And so my friends came from lots of different backgrounds. And, I'm an 80s kid. And so in those days, the divorce rate was really high. It's still pretty high. And I had a lot of friends who were either growing up going through a divorce with their parents, or their parents were already divorced and they were being raised by independent parents, is what one of my patients told me to say, instead of single parents. And so I saw a lot of kids struggling. I know now that probably what a lot of my friends and kids I went to school were dealing with was some combination of depression and anxiety. And so I figured there was something that I could do that would be super helpful for the young people and my peers. And so I was the listener. That was really sort of where it started. And what we had in our household was a lot of love. I know a lot of people say that, but it really was. And I felt like we had full support for any and everything that we wanted to do. If I said I want to be president when I grow up, my parents were like, you go, we know you can do it. And so for me, having that kind of loving support was something that I felt every kid should have. And so I think that's really sort of what pushed me in the direction of being a person who tried to provide that for other people. What could I do as one individual that would help kids and young people in particular always have a space where they felt seen, valued, loved, and supported, especially for kids who feel like they're outsiders or misfits, which when I was a kid, I often felt like that because, even though it was the 80s, it was pretty segregated. And so, being a person who floated in between lots of different groups, I see that my children do that now. Sometimes it was really hard because it was sort of hard to figure out, is there one group that you fit in or do you fit in all? And so really that was it for me. And I decided once I got to college that, I wanted to be a mental health professional because there was something about being able to work with people's emotions that just felt natural and exciting to me. And that really began my path. And then the final thing I'll say is the other thing that I learned over time was that I wanted to be the kind of psychologist who could create the science to be able to help all kinds of young people. I wanted to be the person to develop these innovations that were going to allow anybody to come into a mental health clinic or a mental health office and feel like there was somebody sitting on the other side of that table who really, really understood them. And as I even say it, it makes me emotional because I think, so often people don't have that in other spaces in their lives. They don't have a person they can go talk to who just listens, who doesn't judge, or who tries not to judge, and who really understands. So that really was it for me. I always wanted to be that person, and I found a career that allowed me to do it.
That's it for Mind Time with Madison. I'm Madison McGregor. See you next time.